in, turn the mic up for us so they can hear us now. And then, boom, there we are.
Procedure.
So, this is the camera that we're streaming to. That's the backup camera with the backup audio. And this is, I don't know what that one is yet, but it's on. So there's all the cameras are on. And the idea is after the fact, then I can like pick and choose which angles are the best and all that kind of jazz. Yeah, exactly. I can like switch and have the multi-camera effect without, you know, messing with the stream, because the stream needs to stay focused on you and me just talking. If I try to like switch it back and forth, then I got to sit here and do this, and I would need like a third person to do that, and I can't pay nobody to sit there and play with a computer. So anyway,
that's what people pay us for.
Exactly. I get paid to play with a computer. I end up paying somebody else to do it. Hello, everyone, all 50 million of you, wherever you are. Welcome to the second Emerald City Tech Talk. That's what I've named it so far. Oh, and we have a chat. Usually what I do here is I can see this, usually, and I've just realized I made a fatal mistake. These little bitty lines are somebody chatting. On my giant screen over there, I can see them in OBS.
Resolution, yeah.
Right. But here, I have to go over here to see what they said. Oh, it's the Stream Elements thing. So.
Hello.
Yeah. So
bot.
that popped up and said basically who we're talking to today, which is you. This is Vanessa, everybody.
Hi.
Do you want to introduce yourself and say a thing or three?
My name is Vanessa. I work as a services software developer, mostly in Go, for a company called Glympse. It's enterprise location sharing software used by a bunch of large companies that have the need to share location to their consumers. So we white label what we do as a product. It's a lot of services-oriented architecture, and learned a lot in the last few years about just general design patterns and trade-offs for that sort of thing. And in the meantime, I learned to really like the language Go. And
nice. So do you get to write that on a daily basis?
Yes. Yeah. Almost all of our microservices are written in Go.
Yeah.
Obviously, our front end is not in Go right now.
Yeah.
We are one of our other Go fans at work, and I attended Gophercon, and there was a workshop on WebAssembly that was really great. But one of the main takeaways from it is that it's probably not quite ready, you know, for that sort of heavy usage.
I feel like every time I hear about WebAssembly, it's like, here's all these cool things it's going to do.
It's going to do.
Yeah, don't get too carried away yet.
Yes.
It's not ready.
Yeah.
Phooey, gotta wait more.
Well, one of the most exciting things about WebAssembly that I learned while I was there was that the people, you know, on the edge of it are starting to use TinyGo to compile really small binaries.
So wait a second, help me out here.
Yeah.
I'm not actually familiar with this at all.
Oh.
What is TinyGo?
TinyGo is
TinyGo.
Well, you take a gopher and then you make them really small.
Oh, okay. That explains it then.
No,
so,
it's a project by some really cool people whose names I'm going to destroy because they're European, but
you can always give it a good go.
You can go look it up. It's a public project. You can actually just go to, I think it's tinygo.org, and
so
it's a compiler.
Yeah.
It's a compiler for Go that supports a lot of the language. You know, not all of the libraries, the standard libraries, but what it uses a different compiling process. Uses a Clang and LLVM to make a really small binary that can fit on like a microprocessor. A microcontroller. So.
Okay, so it goes on microcontroller.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, I mean, that's one use of TinyGo. Another one is just, you know, so Ron Evans, who's a big like hardware hacker, electronics guy, did a presentation at Gophercon this year, where what?
Customs just said typical Go binaries are huge.
Yes, exactly. Well, they are. So he wrote Hello World, and it was like over a megabyte.
Yeah.
It's it's quite a it's somewhat hefty. I mean, all the libraries are standard. And,
yeah.
After the when he compiled the same basic code using TinyGo's compiler, it was like 12 kilobytes. So you can fit it almost anywhere.
That's pretty awesome.
So yeah, and it comes with a one distinct package called a machine package that's currently in development. That basically allows you to interact with different types of hardware.
And you were saying y'all are using that for the microservices?
No, well, Go, not TinyGo.
Oh, okay.
No, we got into TinyGo because
it's small.
TinyGo. Yeah, I don't remember how we started talking about TinyGo. I just think it's cool.
It's interesting that you bring that up because not TinyGo. Like I got into Go because of being able to compile to whatever platform I wanted, because I wanted to be able to build an executable and just put it out on a box, and I didn't want to have to worry about, oh dear, I have Windows or I have Linux or I have whatever, and I have to use something different for it. With Go, I could just get that binary built and toss it out there, or give it to someone who's doing automation and ops and ship it. And I always felt like, wow, these are such small binaries, right? But I realized somewhere along the line that I just felt that way because I had been doing so much C# for a while.
The heavy.
And I was like, well, you needed I think when it started, you needed a 50 megabyte framework on your machine to begin with, and then you did the build into the CLR code, executable, etc. And that ended up being like, at minimum, you'd have a project with 150K of code because it's just it's the text.
Right.
And then you do the build, and you're like, wait, how did I get 25 megabytes of an executable?
Because every line that you wrote just
exactly it referenced like a library it had to pull from somewhere. So I always felt like the minute I started writing Go, I was like, oh, this is sweet. I can build it, ship it, and then it's out there.
Yeah, and Go, there's almost that sense that you can understand the entire language. You know, and you can do so much with just the standard libraries. You don't have a lot of built-in data structures laying out there. You don't even have generics, right? You define your types. Like, if you use an interface, it's going to stay an interface. Like, unless you try and marshal it into something, and in that case, like, you have to have your like explicit error handling around everything. So it's very like nice, it's readable, it's easy to understand for new people. Like, I didn't come into Go with like a long history of programming. So I'd done some programming, of course, but a lot of stuff still felt like hand-wavy to me, like magical. Like, we're just using this package because it does this thing, and I'm like, how do you know that's what it does all of the time?
Right.
Because I bet it doesn't. I bet I could break it. And that's when people ask you if you want to be a tester.
You have to be careful about that. You end up doing other things besides what you're trying to do. So, quick hello to
I can't read it.
We're doing good. However you say your name, person.
He wants you to howl like a werewolf. Go, that's great.
Oh, there we go.
Go binaries are cool.
Custom, and it's how about a typical HTTP library? I forget the name of it. Is it able to be compiled using it?
It's net/HTTP and
the core.
Yeah, the core. And I don't think it's supported yet.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's in development. Yeah, he did. He said I probably meant net/HTTP. I think that's still in development. So like IoT stuff is kind of still being hacked together.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of projects out there using it. I think maybe it was Brent Evans posted that the star count on the project since Gophercon has exploded.
That's cool. That's usually a net positive effect, especially when a project is trying to get done and everything.
Yeah.
So, and sadlonelyghosts, yes, that's exactly what we're talking about. So less than 1 megabyte, which is awesome. I'm gonna have to take a look at it. I'm very curious about it now myself. I'm always trying to make containers smaller, and whatever I gotta ship, out, I always try to make it small, even if I have the gigabit pipe or whatever giant way to send it. I always want to keep it small because
you don't want more than you need.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And eventually, you're bound to run into a scenario where it's like you don't have a gigabyte pipe. You have somebody has a modem or something for, and you're like, well, now what do I do? Well, you sit there for 5 years or something.
There's a really cool person in our office who is particularly interested in accessibility. She does a lot of our web front end stuff, and one of the things that, because I don't work on the front end very regularly, like I'm totally scared of doing anything that has to be executed client side. Like, I don't know what that looks like out there. It's the Wild West. You could be trying to run this on a PlayStation for all I know. But she's very brave and very very interested in making sure that things are accessible, not just to people with like standard accessibility issues, but people in areas with slow internet.
Right.
Or like access to old technology, things like that. So like having being able to transmit information like in just like text forms or really small binaries that can be downloaded by someone who has like maybe like a satellite connection.
Right. I feel like that's become infinitely more important since so much of what we do now has to be done via a computer or something. It's like if you don't have if you don't have a good accessible way to get into it, then that really puts out a lot of people. So what are you saying, Customer?
Many compilers is a good thing, but it adds like work to library makers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Go doesn't have any other compilers yet. I was reading a really interesting conversation just in the Gopher Slack.
That's whatever I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, sidebar, I was just talking about this with somebody at work. So like my background, my training is in mathematics, and so I'm very strict about my language with mathematics, but I don't really have any formal training in computer science beyond like my own reading and like intense interest. So sometimes I feel like I use or I hear terms used in like ways that mean a variety of things, and then I have to try and get clarification, or like I'll hear something used in one way and then I'll use it that way, and someone will demand more specificity that I don't really have. And so like I totally feel that whole like job. Yeah.
This industry is weird for that too, because it appropriates all these words, trying to make this unknown thing more explainable to people. It appropriates everything.
It's all analogy.
And I so often am like, you architected it. You realize people don't say that outside of computer science. At least they haven't and I looked it up. It was like 600 years ago that it was written as architect as a verb.
Huh.
And it was at one point, a long, long time ago, but they quit doing that because you design an architecture.
Right.
You don't architect an architecture.
So, designed it and built it. Yeah.
Right.
I think, and part of that might be because, like, when I describe, because I have a real interest in architecture and design, like, sort of like that. That's
where my question came from.
Yeah.
Because I first studied architecture, and then I got into software later. And I'm like, I feel weird about this word use sometime.
Yeah. So when I tell people that I have interest in design, like, sometimes they'll think that means I have some kind of like a visual talent that I do not have. Like, I can tell you that it looks off, but I have no idea. I don't have that special skill. So
that's funny. General standard package is a big step forward in delaying, but isn't the Go core team open to community country? Sadlonelyghosts, they are, but they also don't arbitrarily put in anything. If they don't have to. Like recently...
Lots of proposals, lots of discussions.
Yeah, recently they just went through the whole, should we put in try-catch blocks? And they decided no, they were going to do it. So Go, they purposely are keeping Go to kind of a minimal subset. They don't want it to evolve rapidly in any particular direction, which is a good thing. Because like you were mentioning earlier, you have a finite set of features that you work with, period. And it's not like a finite set of features like in JavaScript where you can extend it and break it in the weirdest ways possible. It's like you work with it in that convention. Yeah. And that makes it extremely powerful in the sense that you can get binaries built and things like that in a known way.
Yeah. Take away a lot of like this sort of decision making that can slow down engineering teams, like formatting conventions and things like that. Just go format. Everybody just goes with go format, and you know, you might like it, you may hate it. Nobody really likes it, but we all use it.
What was the first thing you ran into writing Go, where you thought, this doesn't make any sense? Why is it doing this?
I don't think I'd ever worked professionally with a language that didn't have any generics, and so it took me a minute to get my head around just proper use of like interfaces to sort of like create that contract and make sure that it's consistent everywhere. Also, like Go's tools also being open source, to go back to what Cusco Man was saying, like they're very much like a community effort, and so every time something changes with the language, like they'll break in and catch up. So yeah, just trying to keep it seems like such small problems, but just keeping like signatures the same everywhere, and just making sure that like this actually works. Like sometimes I'd get to the end of something that I designed and be like, oh, I need to change this out in the contract because this is not going to work.
Yeah. I think you're kind of lucky in a way, since it was one of your early languages to dive into. One of the things that just nailed me a million times was the fact that I knew other languages, and I would, you know, just kind of do things like I had done. And then as I figured that out, like I ran into casing, changing scope. I just figured that out by trial and error, right? That was super difficult, but.
Yeah, I took a programming class in college, so I was a math major, like I said, and I just at that time, it was recommended that you take like an object-oriented programming class, which is
like C++
like an intro.
Java type of thing.
Yeah, I think actually we did 1 semester of Java and 1 semester of C# because they switched the curriculum in the middle, and to me they were really no different.
Pretty similar,
They were just different libraries, and like that's basically it. But a lot of it seemed very like I didn't really understand yet. I was pretty young, you know. I didn't really understand yet what sort of problems we were trying to solve. So we get an exercise, and I'd be really excited about like it would be like program your way out of this maze, and I'd be like, oh, is there a creative way to like find an optimal path through a maze? And so I'd sit down and start working on it, and then find out like near the end of the exercise that like really it was just like a wall following exercise. Like, can you can you make the computer do this very basic thing given this very basic framework? And I was like, well, that's not fun.
Yeah. Like the pathfinding stuff has always driven me nuts too.
Yeah, there was a lot of like nice design, I think, that was being taught, but it wasn't made explicit to me that was the point. So there was stuff like okay, so you know, design these objects, and I'm like, I was much more interested in I think some of the lower level stuff about languages that's just wasn't there. So you know, like why would I design how do you make a good design decision about like what should be like your object, like based on your system? That wasn't really part of the question. It was like design an animal object and do this thing with it. And I didn't like it at all. It wasn't until I got to really try to solve problems with stuff that I thought it was fun. And Go is nice because it's very structured, right? So you know, you can put in exactly what you need until you need something else. And then
that's one of the things I love about it. And one of the things I love about the interfaces is that it's kind of like don't use the interface until you really have run into that scenario where that interface is going to benefit you. Otherwise, just build the thing that you need. And I kind of like that mantra. Sadlonelyghosts asked, are there any Go meetups happening soon that are worth attending?
Is Sadlonelyghost a plant?
I feel like you might have an answer for this.
Yes, my company is actually hosting the next Go meetup in Seattle. We have a Go user group in Seattle, and they do coffees on the east side pretty frequently, I think after work.
Wait, is that the one that meets at the I always say the hippie coffee shop.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, okay.
By the hippie bookstore.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, Morgan usually runs those, and he's great. And,
Yeah, I've been to those a few times. So.
Yeah, yeah, here in Seattle, we try to host them at like different companies. So yeah, our company has a cool space, and we're hosting next Thursday. It's the 22nd.
Thursday. Yes. Okay.
Yes, 22nd. I'm gonna be there after work, so I think we're just gonna kind of open the doors at 6 o'clock. We have food and usually beer and stuff. And
cool.
We didn't get a actually, this month's meetup is a little unusual. Usually we have a speaker schedule, but this one came about because in the Gopher Slack, someone said, hey, I'm going to be visiting Seattle during this week. Is there going to be a meetup? And I was like, there should be a meetup.
Just put one on there. Yeah.
Sure. We should get together. We still have this momentum.
Yeah, I feel like that's as good a reason as any to schedule a meetup. It's like, we don't have a speaker, but hey, you want to have a meetup? Let's have a meetup.
Yeah, I mean,
get some people together.
People can talk about, that's kind of like what you're doing here, right?
Oh,
we
yeah.
can talk about anything.
Yeah. True. The east side one was interesting too, because the first time I fumbled into that was the month after I moved out of Redmond. Redmond had a Go meetup.
Oh.
and I was like, oh, I literally lived right under, like there's that little walking bridge right there beside the hippie coffee shop. I can't remember what it's called. I love that coffee shop though. Like you can go to the trail, and right there was where I lived in the apartment, so I could go like right under the trail and be there. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I would have gone to that every single time. But I did go a couple times, even though I had to come from way over here in Ballard over there. I was like, oh, it's totally worth it. I'm gonna go over there. And I've been meaning to go to the one downtown, but I had been sluggish in making it to that one or the Kubernetes meetup, and I want to go to both of those.
Yeah, so. Kubernetes meetup is good too. It's a lot harder to get people together for things like coffee in Seattle because there's no parking. Soul Foods. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That I do hear that it's a problem a lot.
Yes. So
I'm unfamiliar with the parking problem.
We try to make it more of an event, so that way people can actually come out and stay out for a little, as long as they would like, and do it a little less frequently, but with a little bit more planning. And it's fun. We have a great Go. One thing that Go does have is a really great community. Yeah. And something that I really, we keep talking about like the simplicity of learning and like getting started in Go, but one of the things that the standard formatting and things like that lend themselves to is that it makes it really easy to like read and work with other people's code.
Oh yeah.
And so in that sense, it's like even kind of accessible for developers.
I want to send you a Go code base I have.
Because it's horrific or wonderful.
So
it's got to be one or the other.
Have you ever seen a Java project that follows very extensive Java convention?
Oh no, and just like a direct
It was like a direct work. Oh. Like they had factories broken out and stuff, and they tried to write objects directly into Go, and it was impressive what they had done. But
as an exercise.
Yeah, it was a project I had, and then within a month I probably deleted 80% of the code.
Well, it's really,
so it's like you just don't need a lot of it.
And what's kind of nice, well, this is something that I also wish I had learned when I was in college, right? When I was taking math programming classes, like I was also people in math have like an ego in general, but amongst other math people, they don't really have that much of an ego because we all know we suck. You can be incredibly smart and still have a sense of how much it is that you don't know and probably will never know, and what kind of impact you ever have a hope of making on like the mathematical community at large. Yeah. Right. And I
feel like you get introduced to that pretty quickly going into mathematics.
Yes. Yeah. And they hit you over the head with some geniuses.
Right. It's just like, oh, never mind.
Yes. Yeah. And then only the masochists stay in it. Yeah. So you surround yourself with like a really interesting community of people, and one of the things that I liked about that community better than, and again basing it on just like my very little experience of computer science in college, which I assume would change if I had gone into it farther. But there were a lot of kids, I was a kid too, who were had some programming experience already and were very like vocal about like their preferences in languages and what they thought about this versus that, and how any language without pointers is garbage, and how, you know, like it's just so many opinions. And I had none of those opinions, you know. I mean, I was always a tinkerer. I loved my, you know, my computer and like learning to do things and changing configurations and deep diving into file systems and stuff like that. But I didn't ever program it. You know, I grew up in a rural place and I didn't know anyone who worked with computers. Yeah. And I was really like, oh, these are all things I know nothing about. And it turns out that, like, I guess maybe, I mean, now if someone said to me, like, I don't know, oh, C++ is the best language, like, I would be like, for what purpose? You know, it's a tool, right? Like, are you building like a desktop application and you need these features and you don't need these? Then yeah, that sounds like a great choice for you. Yeah. Like
it's kind of like, but, I have a hammer too, but I'm going to use the screwdriver for the screw right here that I need to get out of the wall.
Exactly. Like, and I don't know that Go is the best choice for everybody for anything, but it is very popular right now. And I think, like, my theory is that one of the reasons Go is so popular right now is because of the community. Yeah. Because, like, you get really passionate developers in the Go community, people who love to build their own little projects, and
it's definitely like it seems friendly and welcoming, and like people really want to help you with it. When I got into it, I had a bunch of people. Like, I would just blurt some stuff on Twitter or Stack Overflow, and I would get extra help.
Yeah, totally different than some communities.
Oh yeah, well. One of the ones that I got into was Erlang, and that was kind of like a mathematics experience. Yeah. I very quickly learned that I knew nothing about this, and people were going to make sure that I read every manual before I talked to anybody about it ever. Yes. It was kind of difficult.
Yeah, well, so. and that's like the kind of attitude that I really don't, I don't love. Like, I want to kind of like remind people, whether it's like mathematics or Haskell or Erlang or whatever, like, you know, it's people learn in different ways. I spent a little bit of time as a curriculum designer in mathematics as well, and like, it's, some people will learn better by getting an abstract concept first, and then seeing some concrete examples that solidify that, and some people will take a bunch of concrete examples and solidify them into an abstract concept. And you know, exposure is really like, exposure and guidance in like some sort of cycle is really like the best way, and just patience. Yeah. Like
that's one of the ones where I always have had the battle. And sadlonelyghosts, you could do that.
That's horrifying.
I wouldn't stop you. I think you might get worked into a circle, but you could probably do that. The only language I've seen that was really difficult to translate into was going VB6 translating into C# and then back to VB.NET. For some reason that didn't work real well, even though they both compiled to the CLR. But that's a whole different story. Yeah, it was something about the way VB.NET had constructs, because you could do object-oriented programming in it. You could do it in C#. C# was a little bit more object-oriented, but because VB.NET had like added things from VB6, but wasn't at all the same thing as VB6 anymore. It just had syntax that was similar. But they both compiled to the CLR, and when you went and looked at the CLR code too, you'd be like, whoa, this object is basically named the same, everything, and you built it, compiled it, and you look at the CLR code, and you're like, this is different.
Yeah, I mean, like,
why is this?
Theoretically, if you want to break it all the way down to like AST or something like that.
Oh yeah, you get.
But yeah. I would be much more comfortable going from Go to another language, like Python and Java, to like build out some kind of like boilerplate or something, to like take a Python function and make it into a Go function. Like, Go requires those considerations at every step of the way, where like explicit error handling, right? So, you know, Python like will try to give you, it'll try to give you what you might need. Go will not. Go will be like, nope, I'm not building this, and I'm not panicking on this, and I'm going to panic on this, and it'll make you do a little bit more upfront work in order to have like a stable, like well thought out outcome. It kind of forces you to be a good developer. Like Bill Kennedy, I did one of his trainings like last year, and one of the things that he said that I loved was about API design and contracts, and why structs are so nice to have in those situations, because you always know, like you're saying what you're sending and what you're going to get back, and there's nothing like loose and fluffy and blobby about it, right? So there's so many times, in other languages where you'll request something and be like, God, I hope it's there when it comes back. Whereas with Go, you're like, I am requesting back these 5 things, and if they are not there, I'm going to throw this whole thing out. I am explicitly said, or I'm just going to bypass this whole process. I have explicitly said, or I'm going to sub in this default. Whereas, like, many languages are just like, find this in this thing.
Yep. Well, I think the great example that, I had to deal with it in Go, actually, right off the bat, was I was accepting JSON, and the JSON was of no schema.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh God, like I can't use the marshaller. I have to go through and manually parse through all this stuff and then pick out the pieces I need. And it's kind of one of those scenarios where Go prevents itself from being used for poorly designed schema or lack of schema or poorly designed systems without like vast. Well, you can use it for evil, but you have to try really hard.
Yes.
Like you have to go out of your way to do that. Whereas with JavaScript, you can just take JSON junk and be like, well, I want the thing out of it. And if it's in the JSON, you get it. But if you get like a massive blob of JSON, you also just nuked your program. Your perf goes to crap or whatever.
My first developer job I got in a really strange way, where I was working like as a data programmer, basically, like just doing a bunch of like ETL and ad hoc reporting and like just
data science.
Data analysis. Just just writing like nice, quick, like queries and objects to be consumed by an enterprise application. And I had to get to know the application in order to understand what was needed from the actual database. And I was looking for something more to do, and they interviewed me for a junior full stack position. I had never built an application. I had never worked in code professionally. Like I could fix a bug because like it's just syntax and patterns and stuff, and that I could figure out. Just a lot of digging. It was fun, but it was a full stack job, so I was like, okay, well, I guess I should learn some of the conventions or rules around JavaScript.
Right.
It was like,
just pick one.
I literally had someone very experienced tell me something like, I was like, why are we using like in this place? Why do we use equals versus equals? Like, they were like, well, I tried one and I didn't get the result.
So I just went the other way.
I was like, I have a lot of research to do. Thank you for terrifying me.
Yeah.
I'm leaving now.
That's what I feel like the second I start hearing about. Well, I think the summary of my experience with JavaScript is I'm pretty sure I've spent about 30% of my JavaScript writing time discussing what conventions and crap to use.
Yes.
So I feel like the minute, and this is a beautiful thing, like the second I started with Go, I'm like, oh, you need to write it a certain way. I don't care how I write it. I'm going to use it, and I'm happy to follow whatever convention.
Yeah.
Right, you get used to it. So I was really stoked about that. But JavaScript, I always spent just so much time.
Kuskaman mentioned TypeScript. I actually really like TypeScript. There's like a very famous TypeScript tweet out there that's like, oh shit, I wish I could remember who said it, but it was really funny. It was something like, JavaScript, you try to run something and it's like, you can do it, I believe in you. And then it's like, nope, sorry, unknown is not a function.
Yeah.
You're like, shit. And then you try to do something similar in TypeScript and it's like, nope, every step of the way.
It's not what you want to do, yeah.
There's no way.
I've used TypeScript a bit, And a lot of my JavaScript time has been, here's a thing, help make it work. So sometimes it's using TypeScript or whatever, and it's always kind of a soup of stuff, like a gumbo, right? Where it's just piles of stuff thrown in. But I always have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Because I'm language agnostic to a large degree too.
Yeah, you want to find your right tool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I liked it particularly just because I always get really nervous about the parts that I don't understand, and a lot of that is like compiler and down, and so I really want to know, like, I guess one of the main reasons I like Go is that, like, it tells me pretty much up front, like, the tools that exist will mock the compiler's behavior and tell me that's not going to work. You know, it won't even build. It won't even build.
Yeah, that is super nice. In JavaScript most, there are no conventions. If you open Go, Ruby, whatever code, you need like 2x less time to recognize how. Yeah, exactly. Right there with you, Kuskoman. Yeah, the question up above too. Go is popular in this part of the U.S., I would say.
You know, Home Depot is using Go now. They had a big presence at Home Depot and like Walmart and there's a whole bunch of Atlanta tech companies now.
Really?
That were present there, which I thought was fascinating.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I feel like Atlanta has really, like, they got a lot of big enterprises like Home Depot, etc. I feel like they've opened up a lot around the open source notion, especially these big enterprises. Like I helped Home Depot for a while. I was working with them for a while to come up with policy and practice around, like, how do you do open source? How do you talk about it? Like, now that we're talking about something in public, how do we do this? And that was really interesting to see them realize that, hey, we're not a software maker. Like, we don't write software as our business. Our business is we do the Home Depot stuff, right?
And we need this tech, and we need it.
Right, and we need the tech, and we want to be part of this community, but we don't need to, like, keep big secrets. We're not doing, like, super magical stuff with it.
That's not our domain.
Exactly. So, like, we want to harness more of it and be part of that community and have people be interested in what we're doing. So I was really stoked to see that happening, and I feel like I've heard a lot from Atlanta too about just companies in Atlanta starting to make things happen around that, which is really cool.
Yeah, I actually was just talking to someone recently about, do you know who Anil Dash is?
Yeah.
So he had that talk a few years ago about, like, what went wrong, like
Glympse.
the old. I think that's I actually only know him as, like, a tech presence. I don't know too much of his actual work, but I've seen him speak. And maybe like 6 years ago, he had a really famous talk that was something like the web we lost.
Right.
And it was about. This is something that Ian, Molly, and I like reminisce about occasionally. Like that there was a time when, you know, companies like very willingly made their code open source, or like when I think Microsoft tried to create a single sign-on like many years ago, and people were like, no, we will not allow that to happen. We don't want to give our information to one to one corporate entity and then have that used across the entire web. That sounds horrifying.
Yeah.
And that's all kind of gone by the wayside very quickly. And, you know, he offered some suggestions on how to get back to that and how to value open source kind of the way we used to, where, you know, everything was kind of for the betterment and with the excitement of technology behind it. And
it's like move things forward for everybody.
Password, yes.
Got it, Surly Dev. Also, hello, welcome. That's funny. Yeah. I was trying to remember what it was too. All I could think of was Hotmail. Yeah. And I'm like, that was the email
Skype,
though.
Remember? And then everyone was like, oh.
They bought
no,
Skype.
Thank you.
It seemed like a lot of people had kind of phased out of Skype a little bit, and then they bought Skype for like billions and billions, whatever it was, like 10 billion, 15, 5, 6, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh crap, they're going to ruin it. And then everybody was like, who's using it? I felt like there was a big circle of people that were kind of just like, oh, I have good memories about it.
Yeah, and I think they took the tech and maybe rolled it into their like business enterprise tools, right?
It's
like
in,
it's on
Teams. Yeah. I got an invite for a meeting for Teams, and I saw something trigger, and I saw like a thing that what was it? It was like an identifier or something go across the screen. Yeah, 7 billion. Yeah, and I was like, oh, there's part of the Skype tech being used in the Teams thing. But there's still like a standalone thing too that you can get, which is always just, I'm like, oh dear.
There's always somebody who uses the legacy thing, right?
Yep.
Someone recently at work.
They moved it. No, it's still on Linux. I run it on Ubuntu. Or I did run it on Ubuntu like 3 weeks ago.
Someone still got
maybe they did it 3 weeks ago.
Someone still got the binaries out there. Someone still got the binaries out there, and Linux, you don't even notice that you have to make it work because you have to make everything work.
Right, exactly. And I was trying to get Skype to work with the streams, because with the streams, when you have someone like video chat in, like getting that window and making it like show up on the screen like this is really difficult to get that to pair with the audio, right?
Oh.
Because otherwise you're like,
yeah.
And anyway, I was saying something, and everything gets out of sync. It's just a mess. But Skype uses, I forget what it is. Somebody will probably remember, but it's like integrated tech that feeds it in as a direct audio and a direct video line. So you get both pieces in the streaming software.
Like separate or integrated?
It's integrated, but you can control them separated.
Neat.
So it's pretty cool versus just having like a random app that it doesn't know is a video stream tech. So it doesn't really know how to paint
just
it.
Just a bunch of data.
Right, exactly. So that's pretty cool.
That's funny.
Before they migrated to Electron.
They migrated to Electron?
No, it can't be an Electron app. It would bring down the whole internet.
Electron apps, yeah, you can build them for one. I mean, I don't know how well it would work, but depending on what.
I mean, they had so much of it built in, not that though. They used, I guess it was written in C.
It must have been C#. It must have been, or C++.
Well, no. One of the things about Skype when they bought it was it completely conflicted with the tech stack.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it was one of those Microsoft purchases.
So did they throw it out and rewrite it or something?
Yeah.
Like you'd think.
So that's a good question. So audience, inform us.
Google,
we don't know this. Yeah.
I looked it up at my first company, in my first tech job, which I speak about like it was a long time ago, but it was really only like 3 or 4 years ago. I once was dealing with like a consumer issue. End user was having a problem with some app I had never heard of. Dug and found it, and it was hosted like on-prem, and it was a Silverlight application. Oh. And this was like 2015 or 2015 or 2016. Silverlight had been sunsetted for like ages. Yeah. And
it died in like 2008 or something, didn't it?
Yes, and so
it might have been new. So, I don't even know.
So I found the code on the server, pulled it, like I SSH'd the server, found it, pulled it locally, made this change. I was like, it can't be more broken than it already is. Rebuilt, right, and recompiled, put everything back, and crossed my fingers, and it worked.
That's cool.
And well, it was kind of cool, I guess.
Well, you got it to work though.
Yeah, but what was really funny about it was like I was joking that I was going to start calling myself like the world's only brand new Silverlight developer.
Oh, that is too funny.
I mean, learning old technology later, it happens. Do you know Yves Junquera? He's got a company now called Yourbase. He used to be one of the Yourbase.io. They do.
I think I know.
Yeah, you might meet him at the meetup. He and his wife Carla might come.
Cool.
So you might meet them at the meetup if you come to Seattle's Go Meetup next week.
Come to the meetup.
And maybe you'll meet Yves. He's really cool. But he, shoot, I forgot what I was going to say about him. I lost my train of thought.
Develop some technology and.
Oh yes. So his big advice for people who are getting into tech is to learn kernel programming. Oh. He's like, that's something that's there's going to be some need.
A thing to do. Yeah.
And I just think that's great. Like, I mean, and then you're useful to everyone.
Yeah.
You know.
That's an interesting approach to it. I've been providing really mixed I used to just blanket say, like, if people wanted to get into programming, I'm like, yeah, you should do that. Like, what's your interest? And then I'd kind of take from that vantage point. And now I very much say, oh, you want to get into programming? Why do you want to get into programming? Because I feel like there's so much kind of just like buzz around it. It's like, oh, well, I can make a lot of money. I'm like, you might not want to do it just because you make a lot of money. Because you might not make a lot of money, and then you're stuck doing it.
Yeah, or you might hate it. I mean,
right, that's the other thing.
But yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of like tangential spaces that, you know, like we really do need tech literate people in.
Yes.
I don't know, like we talked a little bit earlier about how like thinking people are fascinating, but being exhausted by them.
Right.
And you know, but through no fault of the people's, it's just personality, right? Like, and that's how I am.
Yeah.
But I really do like want to learn as much about people as possible, like on any given occasion. But I don't think I have a particular talent for understanding people. You know, I like patient, like infinitely patient, infinitely curious, but I don't want to manage people. And I already know that. Well, I'm not already. I've learned that through the course of my adult life that I don't want to manage people. And
I'll tell you a story about that, but we'll do that off
the
street.
Yeah. Well, just by virtue of being someone who is like comfortable talking to people politely, you know, I will occasionally get that nudge.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know, you understand tech, and you know, you seem to be really comfortable with big picture and small picture, and like you're trusting, and you know, you like people, so maybe, you know, you'd like to be a manager. I'm like, no, I like being an IC.
Yeah.
And I think I still have like a lot of room to grow in that space, and you know, when it gets boring, I might look to something else. It's probably not going to be management. Yeah. Or people management.
One of the things I love about being a developer advocate is I get to do a lot of coding, and I get to do a lot of IC type work.
Do you make tools for developers, or what?
I do sometimes. And what's nice is I get to control a lot of what it is I get to do. But as a developer advocate, I also know that some people get into the role and find it difficult to do that, because you have to be able to do that in the face of needing to talk to people, needing to go speak, needing to go do all that kind of stuff. But I really am disciplined about like how I kind of split up my day and things. But it's also funny you mentioned nudge, because sadlonelyghosts was saying Slack needs to enable nudge features so we can bother the heck out of each other. And immediately in my head,
already too much of a distraction.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh yeah, that'll help everybody. It's like just nudge, nudge, nudge.
There's a terminal application that someone wrote. I can't remember. It's called like the user on GitHub is like duckboat or something like that. But I think it's called Slack term. And I use it when I'm not heavily communicating with anyone on Slack. I use this terminal Slack application because I find it much less distracting.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, it has some limitations. Like it won't easily show you threads or anything like that. But it's got like a very terminal type interaction, like very Vim like. You navigate. You page up and page down with your K, and you're like, and you know, you type I if you want to actually write a message. You know, you escape out of it, like you're in read-only mode until then. And so it can bell your terminal, but it's very light. And
that's cool.
And also Slack is just such a resource.
I might bug you about that one, because I don't seem to ever see the threads anyway, so I don't even really care about that. Maybe we just don't use them that much.
I open Slack like once a day, and then I'm just like, oh, okay, here are the notifications that I just didn't see.
Oh, right. Yeah, usually I think at Data Stacks where I work, people are pretty good. Like if they need your attention, they just at you, or they direct DM you. And even if they DM you, they usually at you in the DM so that you get like the flag.
Just direct communication.
Everybody's been pretty good about it, but also it's a fully distributed company, so like people are used to like being remote, so that they know how you need to kind of do that communication. I know it can be different when you're in the office, because you're like, well, somebody didn't see the Slack, but I'll go talk to them now.
You have to have a setup for being remote, right? I never worked full remote, but it seems like there's a way to set up a workspace to be full remote. Where are you on camera with your team when meetings? Like, how does that?
Oh yeah, we always do vid chats. We're always on video. And like, yeah, my desk over there, you can see, I set it up where I have a good mic, a good camera. I do the green screen because sometimes I goof around.
You're like, oh,
I'm
hey.
in space or something, yeah. But
Perception's bad up here.
yeah, exactly. It's like I'm on the beach. I can't hear you that much. The waves. But it does help. And I've also, like, one of my friends, he works for Twitter, and he's found, even though the company's not distributed, it's mostly out of the SF area, that if you are remote, and especially if you're in a company where it's like not the priority to be remote, having a good mic, having a background that doesn't distract, having good video, making sure you have a really good video connection is huge to being more productive and really like pulling together people into the team. Like if everybody's always talking from a coffee shop,
Yeah.
it gets real bad after a while.
I have a girlfriend who works remote, and she said that one thing that really helps is her company. I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm not going to say which company it is, but that her company is remote and has an office space, or like is it enables full remote work, but there is also an office space that people choose to go into, and that their policy is that when they have meetings, everyone is individually on camera.
Right.
So there's really no difference between...
Oh, even if they're in the office or not? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
policy.
that's really nice. I mean, we occasionally like work from home and things like that, and I like to at least have a camera in the room, so I feel like I'm participating in the meeting. I can tell who's talking.
I have heard, and considering seeing Microsoft's video chat technology and how they record things in rooms and stuff, I have heard that a lot of people have started to just not even use the conference spaces, but say, nope, go to your terminal and go in, get your webcam going and get all that going, and then we're going to record it, and we're going to record all the elements and have the chat and da-da-da, and that way we have all the elements recorded that you need for reference after the fact too.
Yeah.
So that type of meeting helps them communicate better, and the interesting thing is it doesn't matter that they're in the same building anymore. So it helps kind of build that remote first thinking, and it helps overall the communication, which I think is really cool.
I've definitely, like if someone's had an informational session about something that I know that I'm going to have to support in the future, and been like, would you mind, can we just do it, and I'll record your terminal. I'll just like Zoom record. Yeah.
I find myself 99% of the time I say, hey, I'm going to record this. Every once in a while I'm like, oh, they're talking still. Yeah, I need to record it. Yep, I've phased out. I don't know what they're saying. So I'm recording it. I was like, I know I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. Like if anybody starts to go on and on and on about like some technical implementation or something, and I'm a little tired, I try to record it just so that I can go back. It makes life so much easier and not have to be like stressed out in a meeting. You know?
And I mean, but there's something to be said. Like we have a team member who's really, really great at he's just like excellent at documenting stuff, even in comments. Like he uses a tool to generate like ASCII diagrams. Like he'll
that's so cool.
Like and just drop them into comments on a new service. So he's like, yeah, this is this is like the call flow. Like and drop a beautiful diagram into the comments, and I'm always like, thank you for doing this.
That's awesome. We need more people that can document stuff like that. That's like a super important skill.
And like I can, but I don't always, just because of time pressures. So like I'll make myself a work item to do it, and it'll get deprioritized, and I like have to fight to get it back.
I take notes, but the problem is they're usually only useful to me. That's the other crux I have with it.
Yeah, talking it through with someone else can be very clarifying.
Yeah, and that's usually like if I want to make them useful to someone else, I have to have a quick little like session with somebody and say like, hey, I'm just going to tell you what I wrote down. Because if I say it out loud, like when I use that secondary form of understanding, then they turn into something that can mean something for other people. But otherwise, it's some crap I wrote on a piece of paper or in a notepad or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like people use the phrase rubber ducking, and I think they use it generally to mean like to solve a problem or a bug. But like I like to use it more broadly like that. Like I just want to talk it through with you. Like just let me talk this through with you. When I stop making sense, say wait a minute.
Yeah.
When I hand wave something, keep me honest.
It's one of the things I love about Twitch, because I do a lot of coding by myself, and it forces me. Well, right, that, but also it forces me. Like I get the corrections of people listening to me, but also I have to say it out loud. And if I say it out loud, I correct 50% of the things I would goof up on. Yeah. And I'm also not insane because I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to people on Twitch.
It feels to me a little brave, right? Because I think that I could do it and I would be interested to do it. I've done very little pair programming in my career, but I've liked it every time because I get to sit down and be like, okay, so I think I'm going to do this, and then someone will be like, that might already be implemented in like our services kit over here. And we go check, and then we see if we need to extend that.
You just gave me another idea. I'm going to have to put you on my list of people to pair program with. Because I have a whole setup where I want to do it on Twitch, but we actually have screens and keyboards and stuff. So it's not like we're remote. We can actually do it in a room, like old school pair programming style, like when they did it in extreme programming.
So you've done this, like I said.
Oh yeah. So I even worked at a company where that's how we did 90% of the programming.
That's awesome. I sometimes watch Nopecat, Sue's Hinton.
Oh yeah.
She's so fun to watch. It's because she's got that nice little terminal.
Oh yeah, I love her terminal, and she has inspired a ton of the stuff that I've done, and she's given me a bunch of advice on things, and I'm always trying to pick her brain about things that she's figured out already. Because I feel like she'd probably argue with me about this. I feel like a complete noob at streaming compared to what she's
really put together.
She's got it on lock.
Setup. Yeah. But yeah, just little pieces of the way that she has it set up have been really inspiring to me. Like I use a terminal that I actually just customized a little bit in my downtime. It's like that TinyCare terminal that she uses, which I think is like a Ruby app. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But it's written in Go. It's called WTF Util, and you can program a bunch of little modules into it. So I actually just started working on like a new module for like something that the TinyCare terminal had, which was a Pomodoro. But I want to see if I can use the API of a tool that I already use. For that like integrates also a to-do list. And I don't know, I like doing like CLI type work. And,
I think that's most of my UI work for like the last couple of years has been all CLI stuff. And Surly Dev, yes, you are correct. Sue left Microsoft. I don't know what she has made public for the next steps, but everybody will hear from her real soon.
Yeah. So sadlonelyghosts said passwords and secret keys. So Suze has a document out there that I did skim like out of curiosity once about how to deal with like secrets basically when you're screen sharing. Like she actually has a process set up so that her API keys or whatever never flash on the screen.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I have just rolled a lot of API keys. Because I end up on the screen and I'm like, oh crap, everybody has my API key.
Sorry guys, it's dead now.
I did make a splash screen that comes up and says logging in. And it's got like a fancy little like code in the background. It's just a goofy little thing I put together from some animations and stuff that I got. But I do that, but then I still end up doing it.
Yeah.
Like I go off of it and I'm like, so I did this and this and this and oh shit, I just put it in the
That's
screen.
just you've got comfortable with it, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Ian once sent me there's a really cute like Docker image out there in some public registry or some person's public registry that like it's just like a fake movie hacker terminal kind of. It takes like the first X files in a directory and then like truncates them and then shows you their like byte representations scrolling in different colors and like it just does all these strange things.
What happened?
Just doxed himself.
Oh yeah. C# Fritz is what he goes by.
Yeah. I mean, it's likely to happen.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful with that stuff. I mean, you get comfortable after a while, and then you're like, oh yeah, I just put all that on the screen right there for everybody, and you don't know who's on there.
Just keep all your keys like far away from your code.
Yeah.
Have like a vaulter.
This was a funny comment to me. That sad lonely goes. She said all our avatars can have lunch together. And it's funny that you're called Sad Lonely Ghost because, as you mentioned, in Seattle, it's very common to be ghosted by not just people, everything. Yeah, Seattle's funny like that.
We joked about this on Twitter earlier. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm coming for real.
I can just see our avatars having lunch and they still end up ghosted.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my avatar got lost. Yeah. Oh, it's too funny. I also heard, yes, ghosted is the term. It just basically means somebody's like, yeah, I'll be there. And then you don't see them there.
It turns out that they had a thing.
Yeah, they had a thing, or they had to go put their shoes on or something, whatever.
They stayed at work a little too long, totally not on purpose.
Exactly. And it's part of Seattle's culture, probably because we're all so techie and absent-minded.
I think there might be a little, well, I don't know if this is true or not, but so we're in Valley, we're in like the epicenter of like the Nordic part of Seattle. So Seattle has like a lot of like Scandinavian and Nordic history, which is like culturally a little different than the rest of the country.
Oh, big time.
And so you get just more of like a just sort of a different cultural feeling that I think people who come from other parts of the United States maybe aren't as familiar with. Like very insular families. Like hyper polite demeanor, and so if you come from somewhere else and someone says to you like, "Oh, this was incredibly nice, thank you very much," you might be like, "Oh, they must really like me."
Yeah. One of the speaking of that culture, because I went to Scandinavia and I came back and I could start seeing more of the specific little traces of it. Like one of the things, and I think this is more than just Scandinavia. This is just something that America gets a little offset weird with the rest of the world, but like let's say we work together and I say, "Hi Vanessa, how you doing? Morning," and you're like, "Okay, it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
You go do something." And then I see you like 2 hours later. I'm like, "Oh, morning Vanessa, how you doing?"
They're like, "I already said good morning to you."
Right, and then like at 2 p.m. I'll say, "Hey, good morning," and you're like, "It's evening." "Oh yeah, whatever. Hi, how you doing?" Da, 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 da. We'll chat. But like in Europe, it's like, why have you said that again? Like people get frustrated because they're like, "What? You said that already. Did you forget that you saw me?"
Your coworkers,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
do you need something? The small talk thing, right?
That happens a lot, and I feel it in like elevators around here too. I can definitely tell when someone has clearly been in Ballard for a while, or maybe has been rooted here for a while, because they're just like.
The small nod.
Yeah, it's all you get. You get right. They see that you are a human and you are in the vicinity.
I've seen you every day for 10 years.
Right.
And thus you deserve a small acknowledgement.
Yeah.
But if I ever see you in a social situation, I will try and remember you.
Right. Exactly. And it's such a contrast because like in the rest of the country, especially like down south where I'm from, they're like, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" Da, 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 da. And there's 8 million things to talk about, and they got to tell you about the weather and whatever. So. Yeah. It's just, I feel like Seattle has a lot more of that where it's kind of collided in a weird way that has resulted in, like you said, ghosting.
Yeah, I mean, I came here because it's kind of an epicenter for people who work in spaces that I'm interested in, like a math, science, technology space. It's a very educated city, a very literate city.
Yes,
and so
statistically.
Yes. So I felt like it would be, a great place for me, and in general it has been, but I grew up in the Southwest, very close to Mexico, about like 10 kilometers off the Mexican border, and it's much more like talkative and playful, and down there I always felt like the quiet, awkward one. And then I come up here and, like, say hello to someone, and people are like, "Why are you saying hello to me? Did I meet you somewhere? Am I supposed to know you?"
I'm sorry,
no,
I don't know who you are.
Hello.
It's like, you didn't need to know who I am when you said hi.
Just two humans sharing a space,
Oh, that's so funny.
Make this weird.
I feel like the Russians are using. If we were talking about funny words, Russians are using. Brexit, and it means situation when you are saying you are leaving a party, but you're still saying where food breaks. So wait, what is
people?
How do you say that word? I need to ramp up on my Russian language there. Yeah.
That's funny.
I definitely got to learn that word though. That's good. I'm always sticking around for a few more drinks.
Like the opposite of an Irish goodbye.
Yeah.
We can call it a British goodbye.
Oh, yeah, the Irish ones where you just disappear, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be the master of that.
Yeah, you're like, no one will remember.
Yeah. And when the funny thing is usually at a party, you can just say, well, I was there till 2. You didn't see me anymore? Lose track of me? And people are like, yeah, I think I remember you being there. And it's like, yeah, I wasn't there, but yeah, whatever. That's funny.
That is funny.
I'm going to figure out what that word is. I'm going to tweet it in the thing that I can pronounce.
Cusco Man, if you use Twitter, you should share your Twitter handle with us so we can quote you.
Yeah. Well, I think we follow each other, right, Cuscoman? So tweet it at me. Tweet it at me in that, because then, like, I know a million people that will tell me exactly what it is and laugh at me.
We'll ask people at work tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
Fun.
Check how it should be written. Yeah, okay. Will do.
Yeah, it's the tech community, though, like, it is pretty small and insular, like, in a way that is kind of nice. You know, I do run into similar people, like,
it is
around.
It is nice. I gotta say, like, so being a bikey person, I routinely end up in the middle of, like, all you shitty rich people, and what they mean is the tech people that are building stuff that get paid reasonable salaries. People would have a lot of animosity for that. So I always try to keep that in context, because I know a lot of the time there's certain viewpoints where the tech community is looked at very badly, and because we are insular, we don't seem to do ourselves any favors.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, just us over here doing this thing.
It's true. Yeah.
Did we do something?
I'll be in like a Lyft or something like that occasionally, and someone will say, so what do you do? And I'm always like, oh, well, I work in tech, but yeah, I do like seeing the general tech community become a little bit broader, right? And just sort of encompass like a wider range of like experiences and social situations, and I think the reason that I like working in tech is because there's always something new to learn, and in all the previous jobs that I've had in my adult life, eventually, and it doesn't even take that long, you get to a place where you're like, okay, I know how to do this. What else do I get to learn how to do?
Yeah.
And if you're really good at your job, typically companies don't necessarily want you to go off and be a beginner at something else. Just in general in the world, right? They're like, no, you're great at this. Just stay and do this for us for another 5 years, 10 years.
Keep hammering the widget into the thing. Right.
Yeah, you're the best at hammering the widgets into the things. You can do like 8 of them in 1 second.
Yeah.
I automated that entire job for you, but then it's not fulfilling, and it's not interesting, and tech, like, I can't wait until I've seen a majority of the problems there are to see, and I think it's going to keep outpacing me. Yeah. And that, I love learning to make trade-offs appropriately. Getting to try and make those decisions well, and knowing that there's no, be-all, end-all, this is the best way. It's always
Well, I would definitely say, based on what you said, you're gonna be in store for a lot of fun then, because having been in the industry for a while now, it definitely, I'm not like overcoming all of the problems. There's plenty more of them to continue overcoming. So yeah, it's always like cool new stuff to figure out. It's fun like that.
Yeah, lots to learn, and lots of people willing to teach and go back and forth and take different perspectives. Yeah.
To maintain learning momentum?
I would move as soon as I'm not learning anything anymore and can't get anything, like a good job. Like one of the reasons I really liked that first programming job that I had is the way that I got into it was just by asking if I could do something else. And actually, I think I originally asked if I could get into testing because they had an open test position, and I was like, I already know that I guaranteed I would be good at that. I do it pretty much all day long for free anyway, like aside my normal job. I investigate stuff on the side. All my work is basically automated now. You're welcome. And when asked about that, they said, let's push you a little bit harder. And maybe, maybe it won't be something that's easy for you, but nothing's you're going to have to be a beginner for a minute.
Right.
Like, there's worse things. There are worse things. Everyone is a beginner at some point. And, really, like, that was the only thing I did. I wasn't even a beginner as long as I feared. That just overcoming that fear is the hardest part. So, like, I think if you work somewhere 2 years or 3 years and they're still feeding you more, they're still like growing your brain. I mean, the toughest thing I think about being in one job for a long time might be that you maybe have the same influences.
Right.
So as long as you have a broad, an interesting like spectrum, or like you're not confining yourself to like a single person's worldview or idea of how software should be built. Like, people like to have an answer, right? But there are people in software with like equally valid answers for different situations. Right?
Yeah, so that seems to be what
people are saying.
Sadlonelyghosts and Surly Dev are saying.
Yeah.
I would add too. So
you have more to say.
be learning stuff. Like, if you feel like you're stagnating, like you're just doing the same crap all the time, day after day, week after week, etc., then probably think about going somewhere. But also, until you hit, I know money ain't always everything, but until you hit like upper spectrum on like the brackets you see for an area, you probably need to shift every 2 years to push that up. Because companies usually won't, like the raises or the review periods, whatever companies usually have in place.
Assuming they do it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Assuming they even do it, it won't keep up with how fast you're actually progressing with what you're doing, and it won't keep up with you moving to a new job. Like, when you move to a new job, you can usually get an easy 10 to 20% bump, and you should.
Yeah.
So until you hit like the upper spectrums of the income in a range, like go look at whatever the websites are for an area. Like, I know one's Indeed.com or something like that, and it shows you the brackets where certain positions fit. And until you're up in that top tier, it's like don't stay put for too long unless they're really like, no, wait, here's 15% increase, here's 20% increase, and they get you up into that realm. Yeah,
while you're growing, a CEO actually once told me this, like, while you're growing, you're actually a really great deal for a company, because they get you for what you come in at, right? And then they pay you the same amount as you get, hopefully, assuming, competence, that you're like get astronomically better.
Right.
And then, they'll raise you again, but you might be already better enough to go out and do something more. And I think there's always a balance, right? Whatever is most important to you. Like, I really wanted to. I got a little taste of like building greenfield stuff at my old company, and it was really fun. And they kind of like set me loose on some like a search service, like just like from the POC to like first use, and I did a POC of like an image service that actually had an image viewer attached to it, and it was like Angular and TypeScript and on the front end, and it was my first experience with like Node.js and like building an API, and I was like, oh, this is fun. I really like this, and I want to do more of it, and there's no more of it for me to do here.
Right.
And I want to build more things, and kind of took a chance on the idea that a smaller company would give me that opportunity, even though I hadn't done a lot of it, because they would have the need.
Right.
And also, knowing that like I'm not a crazily. I don't take a lot of risk, which is not necessarily a good thing, but I wouldn't be someone who would go off and do something just because it was fun, like build something without first considering whether I was going about it the right way, or like checking. I might be like even a little bit too careful in those realms. So like, start building something, be like, can I have feedback, please? Like, how is this? Does this look okay? Is this working? And more often than not, it's good. Sometimes people have great suggestions. It's like a really nice way to iterate and grow. yourself, and that's because that's what I wanted. Right? You can get maybe a better salary if you go to sort of a different type of job.
Yeah.
But just whatever you're ready for.
That's your also, you won't run into what Zanyan said, which is 3 years down the road you're quitting a job because it's not where you should be, and you realize you've been there for 3 years too long. So that's a tough one.
Oh yeah, user groups are great. Automating your job.
Yeah, definitely always be working on automating yourself out of a job. That's a good thing to follow in this industry.
Then you get to do new things.
Yep, you get to do new things, and you'll get to automate yourself out of the next job. So it keeps happening.
VBA, wow.
Ow. Fun, yes.
In college, I worked in it was really cool. It was like this evolutionary biology and genetics lab.
Yeah.
And doing some like applied math for them. It was like, I did some lab assistant work, and then also did like these Markov models of evolution where you start at current time, and then you know, based on the current state, you move backwards in terms of like inserting like, having like deletions, insertions, and substitutions until you find a common ancestor over thousands of iterations. And at that time, like I definitely wrote some like macros, you know, just to get Excel spreadsheets to do things without having to do them manually. And I mean,
I worked for a startup that did interesting accounting around house purchases right before 2008. So I felt real special about that one. I was like, maybe that wasn't the best job to have taken to help them do that weird fudgy stuff.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting what people consider programming, because like technically in terms of you know, designing a pattern that worked quickly, like I guess that could be like a very simple script, right? And then, you know, I did some like very simple programming in C of just like math. I'd be the job your coworkers.
Yeah, that'll get you on the shit list right there. Oh dear.
Awesome.
Yeah. Wolfram Alpha and Photomath, yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, Wolfram Alpha. Stephen Wolfram is apparently kind of a jerk. But I mean, that's just what they say. I'm sorry, Stephen Wolfram. but
so if you're not a jerk,
yeah, you can let me. Well, no, I mean, I think it's pretty. He's maybe that's not what it is. I think it's just that he keeps his versions of things like highly proprietary and expensive. And then there are like free or open source versions of stuff like MATLAB.
Open source, I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so educational institutions will use MATLAB if they can't afford Mathematica, for example. Yeah. Thank you. I was like, oh God, did that change in the last 10 years?
I mean, Linus Torvalds went to NICE training or whatever it was. And so I was like, oh, that's too funny. But you know, good on him for realizing he's being a jerk and, you know, doing something about it. So,
well, and Torvalds, and he came out of it, you know, with some good insights. Yeah.
I feel like I've done a lot of. I don't know. It seems like there's an era of programmer where being a jerk was just interaction.
Yeah.
And it almost like some of it wasn't even really. It wasn't meant to be jerky. Like it was just like, haha, that's programmers, right? And now, since there's like, hey, chill out, don't be a jerk syndrome, but some of it doesn't quite go away.
Right.
It's like this weird cultural mix.
I have even, you know, I mean, I know that like there are some ways in which like I guess I wouldn't be your typical programmer, but I definitely have been accused, especially in my younger years, of having some arrogance, especially intellectual arrogance. Around certain topics, just like in the way that I'll approach things. Like if I can't find the logical step between two things, like I will straight up ask for it in a way that I think has an intensity that people find challenging, right? And that's that's part of my personality, and I've tried to temper it, to not be terrifying.
Sometimes you have to jump into it that way, though. You have to be brash to get into a problem space.
I love this world that I live in now because people don't mind that much in this world, right?
So that's cool. Surly attitude is the new church.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, one of the things that I really loved about the internet in my first experiences with the internet, which were like, I don't know, I was probably like 12. And one of the first things that I did was I had a list from a book from the library of a bunch of like BBSs and moos and muds and stuff, and I went and tried to hit all of them, and like one of them was up, and I got really excited about it, and so found some like online communities. This is going to be really random if anybody on here knows what this is, but I like still sometimes play Kingdom of Loathing.
Oh yeah.
It was a pretty. It's like written in PHP. Yeah, KOL. Yeah, I was an early KOL player. So like my name on KOL is Mistake, and like I've done I've done like, I don't know, like 13 or 14 hardcore ascensions, which is like you don't need to drink, and like it was just very different. But there was a community, so I belonged to a clan that only spoke in haiku when we ran the haiku channel. We were called the Blues.
That's funny.
It was a really fun little community. But one of
some good memories.
Yeah, it still exists. It's quite different, but in terms of content, it's like very much more content heavy than it used to be.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is still a huge joke, which is awesome. And the channels are still just an IRC chat channel that like is in a frame.
Right.
Like
that's beautiful.
Like a frame.
I feel like I need to go check that out.
You should.
Because like I don't even think I've pondered that game for too many years to count.
Well, I have some of my clan members are still friends with me on Facebook. So one of them hit me up the other day. But one of the things I liked about the early internet and those spaces is that people, at the time I was like a 4'9" like little person of virtually no societal consequence, did a lot of reading, was not very like socially adept, but I was a pretty good writer, and so on the internet, like nobody knows who you are, so like I would write like something impassioned, and people would match me for the first time in my entire life. Like they'd talk to me like I was just some other adult. Yeah. And I was like very drawn to that space,
That's one thing that it pulled me into, partly because I grew up in southern Mississippi, southern Louisiana area, but it was let's just say a very different thing than one would immediately think, because I was near what was called Stennis Space Center, where they did all the rocket tests for the vertical and horizontal rockets for like the Saturn V, the shuttle, all that stuff. And also out there, the Naval Oceanographic Office, Naval Research Laboratories, and SEAL Team 2 boat squad. So like I was exposed to all these people doing all this crazy stuff. But as a kid, none of these rocket scientists, these literal rocket scientists, really paid a lot of attention to me in any way. But when I fumbled my way into the BBS that I dialed up to out at Stennis Space Center, one of the few, all of a sudden I'm just like somebody in the BBS. So they're interacting with me and talking to me about stuff, and I learned a crazy amount of stuff about airplanes and all sorts of jazz, and I just loved it. And then I meet them, and they're like, "Oh, you're 14. Okay." But it immediately like up-leveled the conversation I could have, because they're like, "Oh, well, you're 14, but we've been talking about that, so I guess we'll just keep talking about that."
Exactly, really cool. Right. Yeah, you've been able to like operate kind of behind like that veil, and so you form that bond. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really that was one of the joys of the internet we lost to me. Sometimes I miss it. Sometimes I'm like, well, there's a lot of new awesome stuff. Yeah, you just gotta pick it out. You curate your community, right? You still do. Like the Go community. It's it's definitely friendly to newcomers. So GoBridge is the organization inside of like the Go Developer Network, and GoBridge are these organizations inside of Go that like. Is Bridge related to
the Ruby Bridge, did it come from that?
Yeah, there is an overarching organization called something Bridge. I can't remember what it's called. But Ruby Bridge, I think, is one iteration, and Go Bridge is
Gotcha.
Go's version, and it's basically been adopted by the official project.
Okay.
And so they do they fly speakers all over the place, and they
oh wow.
That's
super cool.
They host events. So they just recently sponsored an event to bring a very expensive 2-day long, one of the premier Go trainings to a Microsoft building for women and underrepresented people in Seattle to take for free.
Very cool.
Which was super awesome.
Yeah.
And they do a bunch of really great community stuff. They sponsored 30-some people to go to Gophercon.
Yeah.
Who might otherwise not have been able to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're really great. So they sponsor meetups actually. So I don't think Seattle's meetup has joined GDN yet, but I think we're in the process. And then they'll pay your meetup fee and just kind of help you get organized with the other meetups.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I mean, community is huge, and yeah, I like the way that tech has become such a huge part of our community here. But I was reading this article the other day, and I'm not sure what I think about it yet. So I think it was in the New York Times. It was about how STEM education has become very popular, and everyone's pushing STEM, but that if you actually look at science degrees, engineering degrees, mathematics degrees, and technology degrees, tech is actually the only one of those that's growing.
Yeah.
So everything but tech, they're nice things to be trained in, but the people who are learning them, because they're awesome and interesting, are seeing the fields be flooded, except for tech.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I feel like there's a lot of things that are going to be interesting in the next couple of years in that regard of how many people are going into certain fields and how things are just. When in Seattle, we're very tech heavy. So say recession happens, that's bad news for us because if that is the specific part of the market that gets hit, it'll be way worse for us. On the flip side, when the housing market crashed, Seattle didn't suffer too much because it's not like people were making that wasn't the livelihood.
Yes.
Whereas some of the other markets, like in Vegas tanked because tons of people were making So I always think about that, and I'm always very curious, kind of where people really are funneling in and where there's a bubble buildup. And sometimes I'm always a little worried about that because I do remember in 2001 in Portland when I was looking for a tech job. Didn't matter that I had experience. Didn't matter that I could be a senior developer. It didn't matter at all because nobody was hiring at all. And I even talk about that now, and a lot of the time some people are just like, oh, there's always been tech jobs.
Depends on where you are.
Exactly, depends on where you are. Because I quickly got a tech job when I went to Memphis, Tennessee, and then I ended up going to another contract in the Covington, Louisiana, and these other random places. But in a tech-heavy city, it became very just.
That's
it wasn't
saturated.
Yeah, it was oversaturated, so it just kind of sat and languished for a little bit.
That is very interesting. I mean, now that people are working more remotely, you'll see, I think, maybe a little bit more flexibility with that. But
balance out.
Yeah, I mean, I do. The way that people work, just in general, is changing a lot, right? So, the idea that you might have multiple careers in your lifetime is much more likely, and I think just having technical proficiency is useful in general. Not. So I do tutoring with Ada Developers Academy.
Cool.
I have a student every cohort. They're about to start cohort 12, so if anybody is interested, they take code reviewers and industry mentors and tutors and in-classroom volunteers, or they have a TA center or something. I don't know, I've actually not done that, but I just do one-on-one tutoring with students. So cool. Usually they'll come to my office and they'll have homework for the week and we'll talk about it, or last cohort we mock interviewed one of the students who wanted more practice.
How long is it that you do that usually, or how long is their session?
Each So Ada is a year program, but a student is in classroom like 9 to 5 for, and I didn't go through the program, so I don't know for sure, but I think this is how it works, for 5 months. And then they have if they complete the program, they're guaranteed a 7-month internship.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe it's 7 months and 5 months, but they interview for the internship with a whole bunch of different tech companies in the middle, and then some like large percentage of them take jobs at those companies, or at least they've had industry experience already. And they mostly teach Ruby and Rails, and I think some Python.
Just 3 a.m. It's a good time to be programming, 3 a.m., right? I mean, no matter where you're at, that's a good programming time.
That's the best time. No one's bothering you. You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
That's interesting to mention Ada, because I've had a few people from Ada Academy speak at the Seattle Scalability meetup.
Oh, cool.
And everybody I've met that's gone through that program,
they learn how to learn, for sure.
I was about to say it in a way that might not be the best way to say it, but I'm going to say it that way anyway. I like speaking to the people from that academy more than I have fumbled into some students from the other code camps or whatnot. I know they all have noble efforts that they're going for, but Ada seems good.
Yes.
And it took me a little, I was a little shocked.
It's different. It's definitely a different program. It's a commitment, for sure. I mean, so students interview pretty heavily. Like, I've seen some people who I thought were really qualified candidates not actually make it through the process.
Oh, wow.
And people interview multiple times to get in, and but they take a class of, I think, something in the 60s now. They used to take a class of 30 every half year.
Okay.
And they just do like a very complete training with like projects every week and a lot of independent efforts and a lot of community support. A lot of like mock interviewing. One of the things they really seem to instill is like a fearlessness about learning stuff.
Yeah.
Like, which
it's a good priority.
Yeah, which it's so valuable if you're going to be working in tech. That I've had students through Ada who came from I've met students from Ada who like went to law school and ended up not working in law, who never graduated high school but like ended up creating like a strong career for themselves in some other area. Just someone who was a political science student and then decided they wanted to work in open source. Like people from all sorts of walks who kind of find their way into this program. And my last student who's really awesome. Her name is Grace. She just started her internship at Amazon this week.
Cool.
And she, I hope she doesn't mind me talking about her, but so she
You're famous on the internet now.
She was in the Army, and she was an awesome HR and process specialist in the Army, and she thought everything kind of moved a little slow and really wanted to be able to modernize systems, but she found she had kind of a gift for systems. And through our time meeting, often she didn't actually need a lot of help with her projects. She's very capable. But she ended up asking a lot of questions about things that I think boot camps very rarely ever touch, even Ada, things that are a bit lower level than the practical training that you get. And so, she would be learning like a little bit about how to construct a backend or an API or how to spin up a database server or something like that. And then she would be like, having not come from the same sort of like strong tech upbringing, like interests that maybe you and I did, she was like, when I see a circuit board or a motherboard, I don't really know what's happening there. And I really don't, and I think that's very common. I don't really know what's happening between there and the Ruby that I'm writing right now.
Yeah.
And even though you don't really have to know, it demystifies so much. I mean, isn't that so interesting? Because that was something that I never, because it gets simpler, I think, as you go lower. I mean,
I agree.
the concepts, right, get simpler. Like you're like, okay, you know, I have electricity here. You know, I have signal, right? They did learn about things like binary, oct, hex, right? It's like, you know, you learned why these things are useful. I mean, this is more signal. Like, let's talk about current events. Let's talk about like Google placing like fiber underneath the ocean, you know, and from like Europe to Africa, and you know, think about like it's not just all satellites. There is actual physical like
there is a line going over there.
Yeah, for messages, and messages are data, and everything we're doing is just data manipulation. You know, and then we have assembly, and then like, you know, let's talk about like what compiles down to assembly, and then let's talk about virtual machines and like, you know, JVM and stuff like that, and then we can also talk about other types, like what's the difference between a compiler and an interpreter. You don't really know much about this, but you know, there are like, so we just kind of like high level hand waved all the way up to what she was doing.
Well,
and that was really fun.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, I don't have data for this, anecdotal of course, but I feel like even if you go get a comp sci degree, even when you get into the tech and you're doing the job, right, and you're getting OJT, on the job training, that's still how you end up learning about a lot of that stuff. Because even with a comp sci degree, you don't, I mean, you might take some more formal algorithm training or something like that, but you still, there's just so much in the field that you don't get to rewind back to all the stuff to get that basis.
Well, and you might be like programming for the first time. You're like, why is this running slow? And someone shows you how to use a debugger, right? Or, you know, how to use like some profiling tools. Well, CPU profiler didn't show us anything. Let's try a memory profile, right? Like let's see if we can pinpoint where our problem is. None of it is magic, right? I really love that, and I think even though it wasn't necessarily relevant to what she was doing, just kind of reducing the feeling of magic through that makes it accessible, right? And then I think she left the program saying that she was very like, maybe kind of like me. Maybe I hope that you know, I didn't push in any particular direction, but more interested in working on like more of the internal messaging side, or the server side messaging and architecture and design. Just because she, like me, doesn't really have like wasn't at this time as interested in like UI development.
Painting the screen.
Although there's just, I mean, I actually think UI stuff is like a lot scarier and harder, at least for me. So I have a huge respect for it.
It definitely it can go between ridiculously complex, almost to an unnecessary step, to sometimes simple. But yeah, it's a beast unto itself. I think because no one agrees on how that part should work. Whereas the back end, you kind of have to deal with physics. At some point, you're like, well, I'm dealing with light or electrons or whatever, and they're going to operate a certain way. And I have to deal with those on-off switches and all that other stuff at some underlying level, and you're forced to deal with that. Whereas the UI is like, well, we think we want to abstract these elements that are going to show up on the screen this way. And then the people down the street are like, nah, we don't want to do that. So they created a whole new framework for it or whatever.
This is unintuitive, and now like we're no longer a single page application, and we just need to rewrite the whole front end.
Exactly.
Oh, it would drive me crazy.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah, but messages are great, and you know, thinking about my work is just like moving, like transforming data and moving messages around, and I mean, I love that. So.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna kick everybody out now. So we're gonna say farewell.
It was nice meeting you.
And catch y'all next time. And I'll just show you what I do. So I have like scenes, and we're on this scene, and I just hit this. Cheerio.